After the dinosaurs died, penguins had a choice: stay in the sky or own the ocean. They chose the ocean. But despite 60 million years of trying, they're still stuck at the surface. The best diver in the bird world still can't truly conquer the sea. Not because it hasn't tried, not because evolution hasn't pushed it to crazy extremes, but because of one problem it can't solve. The penguin has to breathe air. This is the story of a 60 million year project that hit a wall it will never break through. The emperor penguin can dive to 564 meters. That's deeper than the Empire State Building is tall. We know this because of a scientist named Gerald Koeman, who in 1971 strapped homemade depth recorders to wild penguins at Cape Crozier in Antarctica. The devices were primitive, just metal styluses scratching lines onto smoked glass, but they worked. These birds were going deeper than anyone thought possible. Koeman lost more than half his recorders because the penguins never came back to where he caught them. That's how field science goes sometimes. Lots of failure, occasional breakthroughs. Here's some context. If you go scuba diving, the safe limit is about 40 meters. Go deeper than that, and the nitrogen in your air tank starts messing with your brain. You get dizzy, confused, dangerous. At 100 meters, the pressure is 10 times what it is at the surface. That's like having a small car pressing down on every square inch of your body. The penguin goes to 500 meters, feels 50 times normal pressure, grabs a fish, and comes back up, then does it again. Koeman recorded one penguin doing 70 dives in a single hunting trip. Some dives lasted 23 minutes. 23 minutes without breathing. The average person can hold their breath for maybe 90 seconds. Professional freedivers, after years of training, can hit 11 or 12 minutes, but they're floating still in warm water, completely relaxed. The penguin is swimming hard in water that's below freezing, chasing prey in total darkness. So yeah, the penguin is incredible. But here's what most people miss. Being incredible isn't the same as winning. The penguin has rebuilt almost every part of its body for ocean life. But all those changes do the same thing. They buy more time between breaths. The penguin isn't becoming a fish. It's becoming really, really good at holding its breath. And that's a huge difference. Fish don't hold their breath. Fish don't think about oxygen at all. Their gills pull oxygen straight out of the water, constantly, automatically, the same way you breathe air without thinking about it. A fish is plugged into the ocean like you're plugged into the atmosphere. The penguin has to carry its air supply inside its own body, like a scuba diver wearing a tank. Except the penguin's tank is its blood, and the tank is never big enough. Let's talk about what the penguin has changed to make this work, because it's genuinely wild. First, the blood. Penguin blood carries about twice as much hemoglobin as human blood. Hemoglobin is the molecule that grabs onto oxygen, so more hemoglobin means more oxygen storage. It's like upgrading from a small gas tank to a bigger one. The downside, thicker blood is harder to pump. The penguin's heart has to work harder just to move blood through its body. But that's a price worth paying when the alternative is drowning. The muscles are even more extreme. Emperor penguin chest muscles are so packed with a protein called myoglobin, which stores oxygen in tissue, that the meat is almost black. A researcher named Paul Pongonis measured it. Penguin muscle has about 6.4 grams of myoglobin per 100 grams of muscle. Human muscle has about 0.5 grams. The penguin has basically turned its entire body into an oxygen battery. But storing oxygen is only half the problem. You also have to not waste it. So when a penguin dives, its body goes into something like emergency power saving mode. Heart rate drops from around 200 beats per minute to 6. You could count the beats out loud. Blood stops flowing to the stomach, the intestines, the kidneys, the liver. The brain gets just enough oxygen to keep working, nothing extra. The penguin is basically shutting down its own organs on purpose every single time it hunts. The lungs collapse. This sounds horrible, but it's actually clever. When you go deep underwater, pressure compresses any air in your body. If the penguin's lungs stayed inflated, nitrogen from that air would dissolve into the blood. Then when the penguin swam back up and the pressure dropped, that nitrogen would form bubbles, like opening a shaken soda. Those bubbles cause decompression sickness, the bends, which can kill you. Human divers have died from it. The penguin avoids the whole problem by letting its lungs get crushed flat. All the oxygen it needs is already stored in the blood and muscles. The lungs just sit there, deflated, until the penguin surfaces again. There's even a weird thing with the spleen. During a dive, the penguin's spleen squeezes and releases extra red blood cells into the bloodstream, basically a mid-dive blood transfusion from its own body. But here's what's strange. It doesn't happen at the start of the dive, when you'd think the penguin would want maximum oxygen. It happens partway through. Scientists aren't totally sure why. The best guess is that dumping all those extra blood cells at once would make the blood too thick, forcing the heart to work too hard. So the penguin times it, releases the reserves only when it really needs them. The kidneys are another mystery. During dives, blood flow to the kidneys drops by 90%. In a human, that would cause permanent damage within minutes. Your kidney tissue would start dying. But penguin kidneys handle it fine, over and over dozens of times a day, for the penguin's entire life. Some researchers think penguin kidneys might have special protection against the damage that happens when blood flow suddenly returns, a problem called reperfusion injury that causes a lot of harm during human heart attacks and strokes. But nobody's proven it yet. Every single one of these adaptations exists to solve the same problem. The penguin can't breathe underwater. Dense blood, shut down organs, collapsed lungs, self-transfusing spleen, damage-resistant kidneys, all of it just buys more time before the penguin has to surface and gasp for air. So the obvious question, why can't the penguin just evolve gills? This is where it gets kind of tragic. The penguin's ancestors had gills. Way back, about 375 million years ago, there was a fish, a lobe-finned fish, the kind with stubby fins that could sort of prop it up, that started spending time on land. Over millions of years, its descendants evolved lungs and lost their gills. Those descendants eventually became amphibians, then reptiles, then mammals and birds. The penguin is at the end of that long chain. It's a bird, which means it's a descendant of dinosaurs, which were reptiles, which came from amphibians, which came from that fish that crawled onto land. There's a rule in biology called Dallow's law. Complex structures, once lost, don't come back. It's not a perfect rule. There are a few weird exceptions involving simple traits, but for something as complicated as gills, it holds. No air-breathing animal has ever re-evolved working gills. Not whales, who have been fully aquatic for 50 million years. Not seals, not sea snakes. So every dive is a countdown. The penguin plunges into the water, and from that moment, the clock is ticking. Oxygen draining from blood and muscle. Organs idling in low-power mode. The fish it's hunting have no clock. They just exist down there, pulling oxygen from the water effortlessly, waiting or swimming or eating, in no hurry at all. Picture it. You're at 400 meters. Your heart beats once every 10 seconds. Your guts have basically shut off. Your whole body has been squeezed into a different shape by the pressure. Ahead, you see a faint glow, a squid, lit up by its own bioluminescence, which is a chemical light that some deep-sea creatures produce. You speed up. Your flippers, which are really modified wings, which are really modified arms, which are really modified fins from that ancient fish, push you forward. You catch the squid. Now you have maybe 3 minutes of oxygen left, and the surface is a quarter mile above you. The penguin also loses heat constantly. Its body runs at about 38 degrees Celsius, roughly the same as yours. The surrounding water is -1.8 degrees, and water sucks heat out of a body about 25 times faster than air does. The penguin is bleeding warmth in every direction, through every inch of its skin, every second it's submerged. To deal with this, emperor penguins have the densest feathers of any bird, about 100 per square centimeter. These aren't normal feathers. They're short, stiff, almost like scales, and they overlap to trap layers of air against the skin. That air acts as insulation, but maintaining it takes constant work. Penguins spend hours every day preening, realigning their feathers, spreading waterproof oil from a gland near their tail. If they can't preen properly, because they're sick or injured or covered in oil from a spill, the feathers stop repelling water. The insulating air layer disappears, and the penguin freezes to death. Even with perfect feathers, the penguin has to eat 2 to 3 kilograms of fish every single day just to replace the heat it loses. When food gets scarce, the math stops working, and the penguin starves. Fish don't deal with any of this. Most Antarctic fish are cold-blooded. Their body temperature matches the water. They spend almost zero energy staying warm. Being a fish in the Southern Ocean is way cheaper, energy-wise, than being a penguin in the same water hunting the same prey. There's one more tax the penguin pays: salt. Seawater is about 3.5% salt. Every fish the penguin eats is full of it. Every mouthful of water it accidentally swallows adds more. Human kidneys can't handle that much salt. If you drank only seawater, you'd die of dehydration because your body would use more water trying to flush the salt than the seawater provided. The penguin survives because it has special glands above its eyes that filter salt from the blood and drip concentrated brine out through the beak. Basically, the penguin cries salt water constantly. It works, but it costs energy. And it's yet another problem fish don't have because they handle salt right through their gills. So why didn't penguins just go all in? If the ocean was so appealing, why stop at holding breath? Why not become fully aquatic? Here's where it gets complicated. The penguin's failure to become a fish might actually be why it's still alive. 60 million years ago, right after the asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs, the oceans had a lot of open space. Many of the big marine predators, like mosasaurs, those huge ocean-going reptiles, were gone. Early penguins moved in. But they weren't alone. About 50 million years ago, the ancestors of whales started moving from land to sea. By 35 million years ago, there were dolphins, orcas, and seals. Smart, fast, warm-blooded hunters that also breathed air, but had advantages penguins couldn't match: bigger bodies, stronger muscles, echolocation. If penguins had somehow become fully aquatic, if they'd re-evolved gills and started living entirely in the water, they would have been competing directly against whales, probably would have lost cetaceans, got a head start on the transition, grew much bigger, and developed tools like sonar that penguins never did. The penguin survived by staying in its weird middle zone, too aquatic for land, too air-dependent for the deep sea. It carved out niches in places other predators couldn't handle: the extreme cold, the pack ice, the brutal Antarctic winter. The fossil record supports this. Between 60 and 35 million years ago, penguins were everywhere. Giant penguins, Kumimanu baisiae, found in New Zealand, stood over 5 feet tall and weighed more than 200 pounds. There were penguins in tropical waters, penguins in Peru, penguins in South Africa. Then, around 35 million years ago, penguin diversity crashed. Same time marine mammals exploded. The survivors retreated to the coldest, most hostile waters on Earth. The emperor penguin is the extreme example. It breeds in Antarctic winter. Temperatures below 90 miles per hour. Winds over 90 miles per hour. Total darkness for months. Why? Because nothing else can. The emperor's niche exists because the conditions are so brutal that competition is basically zero. It's not a success story. It's a last refuge. One side note, not all penguins are Antarctic specialists. There's a species called the yellow-eyed penguin that lives only in New Zealand, and it nests in forests, not at the edge of forests, but deep inside them, sometimes hundreds of meters from the ocean. No one's completely sure why. The best guess is that forest cover protects eggs and chicks from predators, but the trade-off is a long commute to food. There are also Galapagos penguins, living right on the equator, and African penguins breeding on hot beaches. 18 species total, with wildly different strategies. The emperor is extreme. Not typical, but the emperor shows what happens when a lineage pushes as hard as possible against the limits of air-breathing life in water. It's the end of the line. The penguin optimized everything it could: blood, muscles, heart, lungs, spleen, kidneys, feathers, salt glands. Still couldn't become a fish. The timing of emperor penguin breeding is locked in by physics and biology. Eggs get laid in autumn, incubated through winter, hatched in spring. This gives chicks the maximum time to grow before summer, when the sea ice breaks up and they have to swim. A male emperor penguin may go 115 days without eating while he incubates the egg, surviving on stored fat, losing almost half his body weight. This isn't a heroic choice. It's just how the system works. The species runs on perpetual emergency, starving, then gorging, diving, surfacing, always cycling between too much and not enough. The emperor's future is tied to sea ice, specifically fast ice, ice attached to the coastline that stays stable for 9 months. If it breaks up too early, chicks drown or freeze before they're ready. A researcher named Stephanie Genouvrier at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution has modeled what happens to emperors under climate change. If current trends continue, her projections show populations dropping by 80% by 2100. Less ice means fewer places to breed. The penguins can't speed up their reproduction to adapt. Their biology is locked into a timeline that evolved over millions of years. The ice is disappearing in decades. Some colonies have started breeding on ice shelves instead of sea ice. Ice shelves are permanent. They don't melt in summer. In 2022, satellites spotted 4 colonies doing this. It's unexpected because ice shelves are harder to access, higher, with cliffs that chicks have to navigate when it's time to reach the ocean. New dangers, but the platforms don't vanish. Maybe it's adaptation, maybe it's desperation. The penguins don't strategize, they just respond to conditions. If the sea ice is gone, they go somewhere else. If somewhere else is worse, they die there. The deepest diving emperor penguin on record hit 564 meters and came back up with food. Below that bird, the ocean kept going for another 10,000 meters. The Mariana Trench is nearly 11,000 meters deep. The average ocean depth is about 3,700 meters. The penguin can access maybe the top 15% of the water column at maximum effort for 23 minutes at a time. The rest is permanently out of reach. The fish that penguin was chasing had ancestors going back 450 million years to the Ordovician period. Those ancestors had gills, so do their descendants. They breathe the ocean the way you breathe air, effortlessly, constantly, without ever having to return to anything. There's a research station at Cape Washington, Antarctica, that's been studying emperor colonies since the 1980s. It's only reachable by helicopter, and only in summer. Most of the year, the penguins are alone in the dark, in the cold, in winds that would kill an exposed human in minutes. They breed there because they have no other option. The physics of their reproduction demands it. The eggs need winter to have enough time. The adults starve because they can't leave. The penguin watches fish swim down past its maximum depth into zones of permanent darkness where the pressure would crush even its collapsible lungs. The fish doesn't know it's being watched. The fish doesn't know anything except what fish know, which doesn't include concepts like limits or surface or running out of air. It just breathes, the way it always has, the way its ancestors did for hundreds of millions of years before penguins existed. The penguin surfaces, takes a breath, dives again. It will do this 60, 70 times per trip. Each dive is an invasion of a world that doesn't want it. Each breath is a reminder of the wall. The penguin can't think about this the way we do. It just feels the drive to hunt, the need to breathe, the cold pulling heat out of its body. But if it could think about it, it might recognize something like this: 60 million years of work, and still the ocean keeps most of itself locked away. Somewhere below the penguin's maximum depth, in total darkness, fish drift through water that has never seen sunlight. They breathe without surfacing. They breed without leaving. They live and die in a world the penguin will never reach. The penguin's children won't reach it either, no matter how many millions of years they keep evolving. The wall doesn't move. The countdown always resets, and the penguin keeps diving anyway, because that's what 60 million years of evolution built it to do. Not to win completely, but to win enough. Enough to survive, enough to have offspring, enough to pass on the same limitations to the next generation, who will hit the same wall, gasp for the same breath, never become fish, no matter how much they look like they're trying. The ocean doesn't care about effort. It only cares about design. And the penguin's design has a flaw that was locked in before the dinosaurs died, before any penguin existed, before there was any such thing as a bird. 375 million years ago, a fish crawled onto land, and every one of its descendants has been dealing with that choice ever since. The penguin deals with it in 23-minute installments, 60 times a day, every day of its adult life. Then it dies, and another penguin takes its place, and it continues. The fish, Just breathe. Thank you for watching thus far, and if you liked the video, feel free to subscribe for more.